On February 22, 1946, Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry walked out of a movie theater in Texarkana. The film they had just watched was called House of Dracula, a monster movie, the kind of thing that was supposed to end when the lights came back on. But later that night, after the theater, after the date, and after they drove down a quiet road outside town, Jimmy and Mary Jean would meet something far worse than anything on that screen. Jimmy was driving his father's Plymouth. He had promised to bring it back around midnight, so the night already had a clock ticking over it. They parked on a lonely stretch near Richmond Road, one of those places young couples went when they wanted the world to disappear for a while. Then, out of the dark, a beam of light hit the driver's window. A man was standing outside the car. He had a gun, and he was wearing a mask. That was the first time Texarkana saw the thing it would soon fear most: a man with no face. But that night was not the murder spree. That night was the warning. Texarkana was already an unusual place. One city split between Texas and Arkansas. Two sides, two legal worlds, stitched together by roads, rail lines, families, businesses, and rumor. And in the spring of 1946, that mattered, because the person people would later call the Phantom Killer did not stay neatly inside one town, one county, or one investigation. He moved through the edges, rural roads, lovers' lanes, quiet places where young couples parked after dances, movies, or long evenings out. Places where privacy was the point, and that privacy became a trap. Keep that in mind, because the geography of Texarkana was not just background. It shaped the investigation, the rumors, and the fear that followed. The masked man ordered Jimmy out of the car. Then he told him to take down his pants. It was not just violence, it was humiliation, control. Jimmy obeyed. Then the man raised the gun and struck him in the head with the barrel. Once, then again. The cracks were loud enough for Mary Jean to hear. Jimmy collapsed. His skull was fractured. Mary Jean tried to make sense of it. She tried to show the attacker that they had no money, as if proving they were not worth robbing might make him leave. But this did not feel like robbery. The attacker's focus turned to her. He sexually assaulted her. Then he ordered her to run. So she ran. She ran into the darkness, away from the car, away from Jimmy, away from the masked man. But he chased her. At one point, she found an old car sitting nearby and looked inside, hoping someone was there. It was empty. Then the masked man caught up to her and asked her, "Why are you running?" As if he had not just told her to, as if the terror itself was part of the game. Mary Jean managed to escape. Jimmy survived too, barely conscious, badly injured, and desperate for help. The two of them had lived through the first known attack, but Texarkana had not seen the worst of him yet. For about a month, Texarkana did not fully understand what had happened. A strange attack, yes, a terrifying one, but maybe it was isolated. Maybe it would never happen again. Then, on the morning of March 24th, 1946, a passerby noticed a parked Oldsmobile on a rural road. At first, the people inside looked like they might be asleep. Then, he saw the blood. Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were dead. Both had been shot. Griffin was found inside the car. Moore was in the back seat. Her purse was open nearby, and Griffin's pockets had been turned inside out. It looked like robbery. Or maybe someone wanted it to look like robbery. And there was another problem. It had rained hard. The kind of rain that can turn roads to mud, smear prints, and wash away whatever tiny pieces of evidence a killer accidentally leaves behind. Police believe the weapon was a .32 caliber pistol. No weapon was found. No clear suspect stepped forward. And suddenly, the first attack did not look isolated anymore. It looked like a beginning. 3 weeks later, the case became impossible to ignore. Betty Jo Booker was only 15 years old. She played alto saxophone with a local band called the Rhythmaires. And on the night of April 13th, she had been performing at the VFW Club. After the show, teenage Paul Martin came to pick her up. They left together sometime after midnight. That was the last confirmed moment where the story still looked normal. By sunrise, Paul's body had been found on North Park Road. Betty Jo was missing, so was Paul's car. Friends and searchers began looking for her. Hours later, Betty Jo's body was found nearly 2 miles away. Paul's car was found in a third location near Spring Lake Park, with the key still inside. 2 victims, 1 car, 3 locations, and 1 missing saxophone. That saxophone became one of the strangest and saddest objects in the entire case. Police circulated its description: a gold-colored Bundy E-flat alto saxophone. They wanted anyone who saw it, anyone who heard of it, anyone who noticed someone trying to sell it, to come forward. Because now, an instrument was not just an instrument, it was a clue. Some reports also suggested that the female victims in the attacks had been sexually assaulted, or that investigators believed there had been a sexual motive. But like so much in this case, even that detail became tangled in conflicting reports. What was clear was this: the killer was not just taking lives, he was creating fear. Then came the detail that tied the nightmare together. Ballistics connected the Martin and Booker murders to the Griffin and Moore murders. The same kind of .32 caliber weapon, the same general hunting ground, young couples, parked cars, night. Texarkana now had a pattern, and patterns are useful until they make everyone realize they might be next. After Betty Jo and Paul were found, law enforcement flooded the area. Local police, Arkansas officers, Texas Rangers, highway patrolmen, investigators, reporters. The most famous of them was Texas Ranger Captain Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzalez, a lawman with the kind of reputation newspapers loved. The manhunt grew fast. Police patrolled lovers' lanes. They stopped cars. They questioned hundreds of people. Drifters, ex-convicts, locals, strangers, anyone who looked wrong in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then they tried something that sounds almost too cinematic to be real. They placed armed decoy couples in parked cars. Officers sat in the dark, pretending to be exactly the kind of victims the killer seemed to want. Waiting, listening, hoping the phantom would come close enough to catch. But the killer did not come. Instead, the town began to turn on itself. Every rumor became a lead. Every strange man became a suspect. Every sound outside the house became a warning. And then, on May 3rd, 1946, just when Texarkana thought it understood the rules, the phantom changed them. Virgil and Katie Starks were not teenagers parked on a lover's lane. They were a married couple at home. Their farmhouse sat about 10 miles northeast of Texarkana on the Arkansas side. That night, Virgil was sitting in the living room, reading the Texarkana Gazette and listening to the radio. Katie was in the bedroom. Then she heard something outside. She asked Virgil to turn down the radio. A moment later, a shot came through the window. Virgil was hit and killed in his own living room. Katie rushed to the phone, a hand-crank wall phone, trying to call for help. Then she was shot too. But Katie Starks did not die. Wounded, bleeding, and terrified, she managed to escape the house while the attacker apparently tried to get inside through the kitchen window. She ran across the road for help. When a neighbor finally answered, he came to the door with a rifle. Because by then, in Texarkana, you did not open the door at night like a normal person. You opened it, ready to shoot the dark. Bloodhounds later followed a trail from the Starks house toward the highway, then lost it. Police found a flashlight at the scene. It was a small but haunting piece of evidence. A metal flashlight with red painted ends. The local paper even printed its image, asking the public to identify it. But the Starks attack created a problem. The earlier murders had been linked to a .32 caliber pistol. Virgil Starks had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle. Different weapon, different location, different victim pattern. So was this the same killer escalating, or someone else taking advantage of the panic? That question still matters, because the Starks attack made the town more afraid than ever, but it also made the pattern harder to trust. After the Starks attack, Texarkana changed. People who had once left doors unlocked began locking them, then barricading them. Stores sold guns, ammunition, locks, window shades, screen door hooks, anything that made people feel 1 inch safer. Some residents nailed windows shut. Some rigged pots and pans as homemade alarms. Porch lights burned all night. Theaters emptied. Restaurants emptied. People called before visiting friends after dark, not for politeness, but so they would not be mistaken for the killer. Fear became a household routine, and fear is not always quiet. The city became full of false alarms. A cat trapped in a trash can, a bush moving in the wind, a postman knocking with a delivery, a man waiting for a bus. Even pale-faced cabs in the dark were enough to make someone think the phantom had returned. Texarkana did not sleep. It listened. But while the town was watching the darkness, investigators were watching a man named Ewell Swinney. Swinney had a long criminal record, mostly involving theft, burglary, cars, and other crimes. He was not some clean-cut local accidentally pulled into a panic. He was exactly the kind of man police would look at twice. What made him more interesting was a pattern involving stolen cars. Some investigators believed car thefts seemed to line up strangely with the murder dates and locations. Then Swinney's wife, Peggy, became part of the case. She had married him the same day she was arrested in Shreveport, and after police questioned her, she gave statements that seemed to implicate Ewell in the phantom murders. Some parts of her story appeared to match details that were not widely known. Other parts shifted, changed, did not line up. And that was the problem. Peggy Swinney may have been the key witness, but she was also his wife. Under the legal rules of the time, using her testimony against him was complicated. Then she recanted. So police had suspicion. They had strange statements. They had possible links, but they did not have the clean, courtroom-proof case they needed. In 1947, Ewell Swinney was sentenced to life in prison as a habitual offender for auto theft. Not for the phantom murders, for cars. To some, that looked like a quiet solution. Maybe police could not prove murder, but they could still put away the man they feared. To others, it was never enough, because suspicion is not proof, and prison for another crime is not the same as justice for 5 murders. Swinney was released in 1973. He died in 1994. He never confessed. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders remain officially unsolved. Some believe Ewell Swinney was the phantom killer. Some are not convinced. The Starks attack still complicates the pattern. The changed weapon, the changed location, the changed target. Maybe the killer evolved. Maybe panic tied separate crimes together. Maybe the truth was close enough for police to touch, but never close enough to prove. What is certain is that for one spring in 1946, a city on the Texas-Arkansas border became afraid of headlights, windows, lonely roads, and footsteps after dark. A masked man had stepped out of the night and turned ordinary places into traps. A parked car, a country road, a living room, and then he disappeared into legend. The phantom did not just leave behind bodies. He left behind a question Texarkana still cannot fully answer. Was the killer never found, Or was he found too late to prove it?